Hi everyone, it's episode number 4 of the Unlocked podcast, and it's a Bitcoin podcast with myself and Chris here from Emerge 21. And today we're going to talk about really what's happening and trying to ignore the noise out there and focusing on Bitcoin, finding that signal. And Bitcoin is that signal in the noise. And it's been a crazy, well, week and a half now with Bitcoin. The price has been really escalating, going up quite high, hitting all-time highs. Seems to be every other day over the last few days. But Chris, how are you and what are you making of things at the moment?
Good. I was just about to ask you the same question. Like how do you feel at this stage of the market? And you know, yeah,
It's weird. It's kind of it's like repeating itself, isn't it? Which we kind of thought it would. The cycles happen. It's that time of year. It's kicking off again. But it's also me trying to jog my memory, thinking how did how did it all sort of play out the last time in the last cycle? About over Christmas into New Year and things like that. But like history rhymes, but it never really repeats itself. Things are very different now. What's happening, what we're just talking about offline with what Sailor's doing with MicroStrategy, what other companies are starting to talk around, these big companies like the likes of Microsoft, what's happening there. And all the signs is like all the signal within the Bitcoin space. Bitcoin is that signal, but what's happening, how things have lined up over the last few weeks effectively with regards to the US elections, the seemingly bullish kind of Trump, the president coming in now in the new year, his whole administration having like Kennedy involved there, and just all these people that were talking at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville, all their plans. Senator Lummis with the whole kind of trying to get the strategic reserve asset set up as well in the U.S. Government balance sheet as such. But it's a kind of a strange time. It's one of those ones where things have escalated so quickly, or they seem to have picked up pace quicker than I expected they would, um, even over the last 2, 3 weeks. And it's a strange one. How do you feel? It's kind of weird. I thought at this point in time with the price, just specifically looking at the US dollar price in comparison to what Bitcoin is, it's like you thought you'd be a bit more excited about it, but I'm kind of just sitting back going, it's 90, what was it, 94,500. It's just Bitcoin's doing what it does and what it's meant to do. So,
yeah,
yeah, you just
that's
sit
experience.
and
I'll
watch the
being on
show.
a few cycles, I suppose. But uh, yeah, look, I think first of all, a lot of Bitcoiners have been saying the same thing for many years now, and I agree. I think it's happening faster than people expected. I always think it's down to education levels. I think the bottom of the bear market kind of represents the amount of people that still really understand it. Like there's exuberance in the bull markets, and there are going to be people that come and go, but the bottom of the bear market really represents, and you can see that stepping up every time. The bottom of the bear market is really the proper holders that aren't going to
Mm,
sell,
they're
and
tough
that's
times.
yeah.
Tough
But that,
times.
but that's you look at it every 4 years, but the bottom of each bear market is massive gains. Like if you're like,
Mm,
and then the top of each bull market is massive gains. So you're getting those higher highs and lower lows each time. But I just think in general, again, once you do the study, it's so obvious, like so obvious, and you kind of when it's not spoken about, you're beating your head off the wall, going, how are people not understanding this? How are people not seeing what's happening? And I think we're probably at that stage now where people are seeing what's happening. I still don't think they fully see the bigger picture on what's going on in terms of adoption. If you take it right back to the start, like ignore a lot of the noise that happens about governments banning it, about protocol going down, cyber hacks, quantum computing, all this. Like the time to break Bitcoin was the first couple of years when it was such a
yeah.
small network, such a small code base that Satoshi, which was a single point of failure, could actually tweak and make releases. Now with that consensus mechanism, it's not happening. Um, we're past that stage. It's reached escape velocity. There's no break in the protocol. At this stage, it's as I say, needed to be done in the early years. There's still a lot of noise around in terms of media. I think probably traditional banking system, traditional media, anybody who the fiat system is benefiting majorly, is going to push against this. So I'll
Mm,
count it as three groups: people who understand it, People who don't care about it, who are usually the rich and you have 50 million sitting in the bank now and it served you well over the years. You're probably not wanting to understand Bitcoin that well until you see the price maybe going parabolic. And then there's people who are fighting it because long term they want the power and the control still. So, like, obviously we fall into the category of we've understood it. We do care about it, and we don't want to fight it. We want to go with it. But yeah, just overall, I think there's been a lot of noise over the years. I think that's clearing. I don't know what's left in the runway to fight now. There's obviously, Greenpeace were out with their activities saying that it's bad for environment and stuff like that.
Are they still kicking around with that
I don't
nonsense?
know. I think there was a paid campaign by one of the other cryptocurrencies. I'll not name them.
That was a while, yeah, a while ago.
Pointers. Yeah, yeah. But like it's all noise. I think if you look at people's actions in general, like look at the price as a measurement in general of adoption. I know it's not everything, but it's a huge like Bitcoin's available in every country. Like you can transact in every country. It's a global network. Um, you look at the actions of I could probably name 10 billionaires like just rhyme off who have had interest, spoke about Bitcoin publicly, um, or currently invest in Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin. But I would say there's plenty out there that are stacking Bitcoin, but they're not disclosing it yet because they want to get a certain
Yeah.
percentage of their net worth or a certain percentage of the holdings. I think countries are like that as well. But
Yeah.
if you just look at people's actions and ignore a lot of the words and that people say, like the pathway is clear for Bitcoin at this stage. Um, I think when you again break it down very rationally against other assets, it's dominant. So there will be more times where it's going to be hammered in the media or hammered by certain groups and people trying to put you off. Like maybe there's usually a uh, narrative behind there or
Mm.
ulterior motive
Mm.
from someone. But I
Mm.
think overall the runway is clear from here. I'm not
Yeah.
saying there's going to be no challenges to it, but yeah, there's always going to be noise, and I think we just have to focus on what Bitcoin is, the black and white of it. It's running every 10 minutes. It's produced new block. It's a service there for anyone with an internet connection to use, and it's really as simple as that.
Yeah. And I think too, it depends just obviously it's that time of the cycle where any new people coming in or people that have maybe been in for the previous cycle, they start seeing what they consider like opportunities within the other cryptos. They're thinking this is going to go like, up 200%, 400% and over the
Mhm.
course of a day or a week. People start maybe getting a wee bit too not bored with Bitcoin, but the people that have been maybe holding it or sitting there, they think, well, I might want to try to make a bigger gain in a shorter period of time, and they start gambling. And it happens. It's in a way it's human nature, but that is again the thing. You're taking a massive risk there. Your likelihood is it's not going to work out. You're gonna, lose. You're gonna, make a loss pretty much 98% of the time. But that's the concept too, understanding from again first principles and understanding the fundamentals of Bitcoin. That shifts your mindset very much. And again, what we were talking about kind of before the podcast as well, it's like it's that long-term investment mindset. And yes, it's nice to try to, play about and invest in other things potentially, which are maybe within the Bitcoin ecosystem. We're talking a little bit about MicroStrategy, but again, we're not here to be giving advice around investments or anything like that. It's just getting that educational concept of Bitcoin, learning it for yourself, and then making your decisions around that. But it depends then what happens. Like I think obviously the rest of the noise in the crypto space, I think it's very diluted now because there's so many shit coins now. There's like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of them potentially. It dilutes the whole market in that space. So I can't see these other cryptos making these big gains. Maybe the odd one here and there, these meme coins, these random, celebrity endorsed back things might come back again. But the focus specifically should be for anybody coming in here with the way the world is, the global economy. It's, getting a grasp of that hard sound money that people need for their livelihood, for their savings, for their family. And that's what Bitcoin is. And that's where you need to put your energy. Because again, when you understand it and take the time to, it does change your whole mindset on life and outlook on your financial landscape, so to speak. So it's an interesting time in the market, but it's a time where people can, I think, stumble and get dragged into other random shit. so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think?
Yeah, and there's a couple of examples out there, even when it's related to Bitcoin, of like again, people talking about all their investments and people playing it down, but in the background, they've been building like infrastructure around it. So, well, first of all, like Elon Musk's a huge one. Like he never talks about Bitcoin, but they're holding Bitcoin on their
Oh yeah.
balance sheet for Tesla. Like so, that's the action. That's the main message. And he might not talk about it. I might talk about Dogecoin all day, which he does. I do think he likes the attention when it comes to that stuff, but in reality. Tesla is, I think, is the only public company. I think the other ones are private, so he doesn't have to disclose his balance. But I'm pretty sure on those other companies, he'll have a Bitcoin balance sheet for sure on SpaceX and maybe even Twitter whenever it goes back public, and it might be unveiled then that that's what he's been doing. You know, stack it against those private balance sheets over time. But in the public balance sheet, they hold Tesla. They don't hold Doge, but he's talking about Doge. Was it JP Morgan as well? I think it was even yeah, a couple of US banks were playing it down and saying no, no, and then you see contract agreements coming out after a while to custody Bitcoin. You know, saying as Jamie Dimon was saying a few times that they were writing it off, and there's a lot of people write it off. Like some people are writing it off and then learn it, learn
Mm.
about it, and then they go towards it. But some people, I think, are playing it down, but in the background trying to accumulate or trying to build
Yeah.
infrastructure there, trying to get ahead of the competition by saying that. But again, you look at the actions, look at the billionaires, the corporations, and now the countries entering Bitcoin, and you'll see that it's completely a serious investment and savings technology, and one to change the world.
Yeah. And I think people underestimate again. People are sitting on the sidelines, or people are again just coming into the learning about Bitcoin or trying to understand what it is. I think they underestimate what exactly is happening now. As I say, like there is a lot of information to take in. Like you try to keep up with it day on day. There's changes, like things are changing so dramatically, and with state adoption within the US as well. Where was it? Where was it again? Um,
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, yeah. There's constant developments every day of the week effectively, but on the bigger scale, like when it comes into this game theory, in that countries effectively will have to just adopt it. Once if the US does this big move, strategic reserve asset, all these other countries within, the EU, Europe, you've got China, you've got Russia, they're all going to have to come on board with this because that's just the way the system's designed. But Bitcoin is designed for that, to really entice people to join, because it's out of their better interest, or better interest and investment thesis, to come on board and play within the ecosystem and use it as the monetary, ecosystem for the globe effectively, as opposed to try to defeat it, or stand outside and say no, this is not for me. But ultimately, over time, over enough time, I reckon like global adoption is one of those things that Bitcoin's destined to kind of achieve, more or less.
What's your strategy if you're a powerful entity and you're looking to enter the Bitcoin space? Because like you can't go out and announce it and then buy it. You probably can't lump sum into it as well. Without pushing up the price. Like what's a strategy for a powerful entity, whether it's a country, a mega rich corporation. Like
Mhm.
what do you do? Like
Well, I suppose you've got countries like there's in Bhutan. They've been mining Bitcoin for, well, it was over a year, or longer than a year, a couple of years. It was from 2020, was it? I think. But it
so
was only announced like a few months back that they announced how much Bitcoin they're holding, and that was mining it. So I suppose under the radar, you could kind of work around it that way. An ideal for countries like Global South, these countries with rich kind of, sort of, well, renewable energy sources. You've got hydroelectric sources, and even like volcanoes and things like that. But using those natural resources and converting that energy into a monetary value is, like, that's the magic of Bitcoin as well. You can basically take sunlight and transform it into whatever you want, into money. It's ridiculous. It's a force of nature. But like, obviously, yeah, small buys as well, like, gradually over time, a daily or weekly buy might not be picked up as easy potentially. But I'm assuming, as you say, like the likes of Musk and all these other large enterprises, and even potentially countries, have been doing this. But I'm not sure, is there a way to check that? like on the blockchain? Is there a way to actually, I suppose there is, because you see people posting around like, there's somebody buying a Bitcoin a day, or
Yeah.
over the course of a 6 month period or something like that. You can track and trace that, I suppose.
But they
But
could have it over different wallets, different exchanges,
well, yeah, yeah,
So like I would say, and then there's OTC as well, which is very, I would say, private market as well for somebody who's entering it. And that's like if you're Coinbase or whoever it's going to be offering that service, like privacy is utmost it's the highest attribute that you want to have if you're a billionaire going there, because you don't want to
mm,
say, oh, I seen Michael Saylor called me up yesterday and asked to buy so many Bitcoin. Like that has to be respected. So
yeah,
yeah, there's probably a lot, and like that's not the only ways to buy Bitcoin and accumulate Bitcoin as well. Like buying off an exchange and OTC market, as you say, there's mining as well. Confiscation was one of them that's actually been used over the years. Interestingly enough, but
maybe the countries,
like
yeah, governments.
yeah, and from a company standpoint, which could be interesting now coming into the next quarter, when the disclosures of what's happened this quarter. I think the FASB rules as well, for anybody that doesn't know, it's the new accounting rules where you don't have to mark down Bitcoin losses only. You can mark up your gains as well, which wasn't in place before. So it was very unfair accounting for companies holding it, and holders who don't understand Bitcoin would see it as a loss and impairment on the balance sheet, when it's actually not. So they
Mm.
weren't counting the gains basically on your Bitcoin gain, and that's coming into play now. But people have had this quarter really to stack, and within 3 months, or you could say 6 months at the maximum, because you could start at the very start of one quarter and the very end of the next quarter, you can announce your earnings. But within a quarter to 2 quarters, you'll have to tell. So you've only got that short window to really start stacking if you want to get ahead of the game. And I wonder if some of that's happening now at the moment.
It most likely is, yeah. As you say, it's that short time frame now. Everything's been compressed for me. Like this time last year, I'd been saying, oh yeah, late 2020. You've got a good runway of like probably half to three-quarters of the way through 2025, to actually have a gradual maybe climb in the price. But it's gone way higher than I thought. It's getting to the point where for companies as well and businesses, even the options of selling their products or services for Bitcoin, just accepting Bitcoin as payment would be another way to, accumulate it as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, true.
Um, well, again, I suppose that's what I'm effectively doing within my optical practice, and that developing an online side to that, and selling eyewear online. So my main focus for that is to drive and sell or acquire Bitcoin sales. So it's selling product for Bitcoin as opposed to for currency, for fiat currency, to try to drive that, and even as a way of showing other people this is what you can do. It's something that's essential to understand, and the best way to understand it is actually set it up, do it. You learn as you go, and you learn from mistakes, especially. So that'll be an interesting one for me to kind of work through as well in the next few months, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. What's the kind of go-to things? Like I have a couple where I say, what's the long-term case for Bitcoin? Like and there's certain things like that are like guaranteed, like the next block will be produced roughly in 10 minutes time. And it'll run, like, will Google be around in 20 years time? Could be, but it's debatable. Will Bitcoin be around? There's much more chance, is the internet going to be around? So that kind of long-term view of things. I think in terms of adoption, will more people understand Bitcoin in 5 years' time? Well, I would say even tomorrow than they do today. And
Yeah,
the answer is yes. And will, like, you don't unlearn Bitcoin. Will more people that understand
yeah,
Bitcoin in a year's time, 2 years' time, five? So those metrics go up. Will there be more money printing in tomorrow than there is today? I'm going to say yes,
yeah,
utmost certainly. Will there be more money in the system from 1 year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time? So those are all like almost guarantees. Like you can't say for sure, but 99.99% sure. And will Bitcoin be around during all these years as well? During that time, most certainly. So
mm,
those are the kind of things that I look at whenever you cut out the noise. Is Bitcoin doing what it's supposed to do? Is it producing blocks? Is it validating transactions? Um, is it doing what it's supposed to do? Yes. Is the fiat system doing what it's basically programmed to do, is create more money, inflate away the
absolutely.
debt? in this debt system? Yes. And will it be around in 20 years' time? 100 years' time? Yes. Can you say that about any other asset, really? Um, yeah, I doubt it. I doubt
Yeah.
it. So those are the
Yeah.
kind of cutting through the noise
Well, and
that I
that's
look at. But
helpful.
any that you would throw on there, Alan?
No,
Here.
because it's helpful as you say. Like this again, what we're talking about is cutting through the noise and focusing in on something that's, that's a truth-based system that, it's a system that runs on its own time, so to speak. But as you say, every 10 minutes you're guaranteed for the next block to be mined or there or thereabouts. But it's ultimately, programmed out there. It's there, it's set in stone as such in cyberspace. But that's the thing to remember as well. When things go a bit crazy, when markets either pump up and the price goes crazy or they, dive and draw down dramatically, it's like always just pull yourself back to thinking like there's a lot of noise. There's reasons for these things to happen. It's not because of Bitcoin specifically. Because I was listening to a podcast that was Breedlove and Peter Schiff were talking. They were having a debate on a podcast, and Schiff kept going about, oh, look, Bitcoin's so volatile and the price crashes. And sure, look at 2021 and or was it 22? Sorry, the FTX thing. He didn't mention FTX. He said Bitcoin price dropped and then went back up and it dropped and it was all a mess. But that wasn't because of Bitcoin. It was because of all the other crap that was going on, all the other noise and fraudulent activity that was going on in the market, which happens in traditional markets, but it was being passed within the crypto space too. So it's not specifically Bitcoin that's causing it. Bitcoin does its own thing. It keeps doing it like clockwork. It's designed in a way to do that over a long time frame, and it's the only thing that I can see as far as longevity as well. The way it's designed, the way it's functioning for purely for money, a monetary asset. That's all. That's what it's functioning for. Then that's guaranteed to be desirable in the future. And when you have a system that's set up to be and to create and to become and is the hardest money that's ever been created, it's got a fixed finite supply. We've never had this before. That's the thing that has longevity. Yes, gold, it's durable. It's stood the test of time. It's a, element from the earth. That'll be around, obviously, in 100 years, 1,000 years. But what's the function of that? What's the desire and the need for it? And I think, again, looking at the global landscape at the moment, like there's a lot of crap going on in the world with wars, for one thing. And as you know, and we've talked about before, Bitcoin will reduce dramatically the amount of wars that are waged across the world, purely by getting it into country adoption, nation state adoption, because you can't mess with it. You can't mess with the money. You can't create it out of thin air, and that's what's funding all this crap at the moment. And it's terrible to see. And as us as a species, as humanity, we should be wanting to create a better world for our kids. We have we are here to do things in the world. We're here to make the world a better place, and Bitcoin does that. And I think putting your time and energy and focus into something that's going to make things better for ourselves, for our future, is the best thing that you can put your energy into, as opposed to try to, you know, speculate and try to gamble and put yourself under a lot of stress, because you will be stressed if you try all this stuff and mess about with all this other crap, all this noise. You lose your focus and your attention to what's important in life. So yeah, I've gone off on a wee bit of a tangent there, but yeah, what was that initial question?
No, it's fine. Like yeah, it's a deep topic, and we all go off and tangents, and that's what these podcasts are for as well, just to give our thoughts and our personal views. But yeah, it's significant. I think, as you say, the noise is always going to be there. I think until we get the full Bitcoin standard, I do think that there's probably purposeful FUD, as people call it, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, from maybe big actors as well, who want to compress the price so that they can accumulate more. So all these kind of games go on, and I think it's a sign of how better understood it is now compared to where it was 5 years ago, even a year ago. I think like every
Mhm.
year seems to be a lot more material out there, education material out there that's high quality,
Yeah.
and a lot more brain power in the space talking about the deep topic that it is, and unraveling it. And it's interesting because how I thought about it the first year, the second year, the third year is different each time. And like God knows how we'll think about this in 5 years' time. but also the different applications that we haven't seen yet. Like it looks like MicroStrategy is going to become a Bitcoin company. It looks like countries are going to start adopting it. Strategic reserve, like those are use cases that never came along for a long, long time. I think I love the journey of it, just how organically it grew over time, and I actually love the the grassroots or ground up movement rather than somebody coming along and saying, as they did with fiat, this is our money and this is what we're going to use, and the issuers get to distribute it first amongst themselves, and then it flows down. Like
Yeah.
they started off with cypherpunk, like freedom orientated people. You would say pretty respectful group of people. Now, all humans have flaws, and that's the whole point of
Mm.
Bitcoin as well, why it's decentralized. But it kind of went from that kind of nerdy type, computer geek, if you want
Yeah.
to say. So they had all the Bitcoin, maybe a few people, and then there was a movement, and then more maybe libertarian style people. So they might have been the tech guys, but they would have been like, yeah, this is money that you can't take from me. This is great.
Mm.
And then we kind of got that run of retail, up to 2017, where, none of the institutions, and I won't say none because I know there's a couple of big companies got involved in it, but, it wasn't anything
I hope it
significant. It
wasn't.
wasn't your BlackRocks or
Mm.
Fidelity, although Fidelity was an early mover, but it was kind of very low key still within a lot of peer-to-peer network and a lot of retail activity. Then you get the institutions coming on, but you didn't get the institutions the way you thought it was. Some between 2017 and 2020, but not what people were expecting. You're kind of like, once you see two or three, you're going to see the next 10.
Yeah.
And then now that's all come, and I can see that there's more corporations getting involved, and obviously all the big institutions now are involved. It's near career risk not to be involved, but that's the way I grew up. And now we're on to country adoption, which is to me probably the final stage. You're going to see it in pensions, you're going to see it in endowments, you're going to see it all over the place. So
Yeah.
it give people the right opportunity, and that's what I love, that seeing it grow up in that manner.
Well, that's it. Plus, you're getting that it's happened. Like, El Salvador is the primary case to follow, and it's if you want to study a country, what they have done is it's crazy. But it's trying to, again. There's people still come at it and say, oh no, it's gonna fail, or there's gonna be an issue, or something's gonna happen, government's gonna ban it, and it's all the same kind of things that come up. Um, and like I'm sure, like you've gone through all this stuff like from the start as well. As you say, you've tried to break it. Every time you come across Bitcoin or you start learning about it, you're always trying to break it to see where the flaws are. But because I was randomly interaction with a person today. I don't know his history, but on Twitter, but like he says very experienced within the space within Bitcoin, but he just doesn't really really think it's going to work for anybody. It's like he just doesn't see the kind of concept. He doesn't agree with my trail of thought around it, I suppose I could say is the best way to say it. But like if you've spent time, like it's the first person I've come across that just hasn't, supposedly spent quite a bit of time in the space and learned about it, but has
I,
come out
I
the other
I think
side.
this guy, I know who you're on about, and I think
Is it
I've came across posts before, and I think he's maybe a Bitcoin Cash or one of the other forks of Bitcoin.
oh, I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe.
So I think he might have been a Bitcoiner and moved onto one of the other forks, and
Yeah, maybe.
hung around that space. So like understands Bitcoin, but can't bring himself to go along with it because he
Yeah.
made a mistake in the past. And you see plenty of that too, Alan. Like you see people who've got burned with it, who maybe sold early, and they nearly want to become an enemy of Bitcoin because they're but a sore loser then in a way. And
Yeah.
like it's not nice to be in that situation, but
Fuck no, it's not.
make
No,
peace with it
absolutely.
and go
Yeah.
along with it. Like I think the whole premise is, and this is throughout humanity, and this is where I see Bitcoin, like the greatest technologies, when you can see the shift happening, like go with it. Like there's lots of failed technologies, yeah, but whenever you see something that's moving the earth, like it's changing, shaping the whole world,
Mm.
like the internet, for example. Like you're better as a company. Like if you were a newspaper company and you were selling newspapers, like they did come out at the start going, get away from those screens. Like buy our paper. Don't be reading off your computer. Don't be reading news off your computer. But
Mm.
the ones who went along with it and put their news on the computer were the ones that moved along, and then it became on tablets and mobiles and whatever. So you have to go along with it, and people will push against it over and over again. But again, if you cut through the noise and look at trends in history, like I know cars have been a good example as well of people who used to be in the horse and carriage industry would have opposed cars and said, this can't work, it's
It's
impossible.
change.
Like how do you fuel this thing? Like it's a big, huge chunk of metal. What happens if it breaks down? And then all the infrastructure comes in along with it because it's a better product than the
Yeah,
horse and carriage. And that's what it is. Like it's a better product than Fiat. It's a better product
yeah,
than gold. And that's what's going to succeed over time. So if you just cut through it and look at the properties of money, it's the most superior money that's out there. It's the by far like, and you're talking hundreds times better than anything that's out there. It's the clear winner.
mm,
Nothing else comes close. So
yeah.
stick on
Like
that
this.
path and cut out all the noise. And
Well, it's as simple as that. Yeah, it's like innovation solves problems, and innovation drives innovation, and Bitcoin is innovation on a global scale, in the digital world, so to speak. Yeah, it's a crazy. I keep saying it's a crazy time. It really is, and most people, as I think, just haven't grasped what we're living through right now. This revolution in our financial system, that's required because we've been so kind of ingrained in this fiat system. Like that's all our lives have been. We've been born into it, ourselves, and it's hard not to see around it. And you can understand people know there's a problem. People are suffering. People, businesses especially. Like again, the amount of conversations I have with fellow business owners that are really struggling at the moment. Like there's things that are just, if they just understood what was happening. I think that's the frustration I have, as well as trying to explain this to people. And again, why primarily why we're doing this as well, trying to get more people to understand just what's happening, what's the problem. And Bitcoin is the solution, even though you may not know it, but it is once you
yeah,
understand it. But yeah, it's a crazy thing, crazy time.
yeah. I know we don't give out advice, like, but what's your kind of general, like not financial advice anyway, but what's your general advice for someone who's new to this, that maybe is thinking, of getting shaken out of it. So they've got a position maybe, and they're just starting out. There's a bit of volatility. Like how do you ride that volatility? How do you take the emotions out of it? Like, yeah, what would your advice be to somebody then if they were saying, "Look, I'm on board with it. I understand it." They haven't been through the emotional side of it yet because
No.
it is like some of the drawdowns sometimes are ruthless. Although they do seem to have smoothed out. That means there's probably going to be a market crash tomorrow. Um, but yeah, it does seem to be a bit smoother. Obviously we're on a bull run as well, so maybe it's different. But what's your kind of what would you say to somebody now who said, "I'm on board. I bought some. I'm going to hold it here." Yeah, talk me through it.
It's always the way. It's just a time preference. What Bitcoin teaches you, it's having a longer time horizon. You got to zoom out with Bitcoin. You can't be sitting looking at the chart day in, day out. It's nice to watch it go up, 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 but there'll be inevitably a boom down again. And you got to be prepared for that. And you can tell people all day long, this is going to happen. Until it does happen, they won't understand the emotions properly. But the best thing you can do is just explain this will be the way, the volatility. It's the most volatile kind of, well, market on the planet at times. And it's something to expect, but just have that 4 year time horizon, minimum 4 year. If you're going to put money into it, think of it as a savings account and let it sit there. Don't be putting money in that you want to be, making 20% on by next week and then selling it to buy a nice car or whatever it may be. It's a longer term savings, technology and account for you to store your value and grow your value over time. So you're moving, you're saving money over time and space, but this is the primary technology and asset to hold and store and to drive and grow your value over time. And you got to just zoom out. That it's cliche, but it is. You have to,
Yeah,
otherwise you will get shaken out. You
yeah,
will, it still happens to me. You're sitting and you see the price, and all of a sudden it drops by like maybe 5-10%. And you're like, oh, but you're referring to the fiat price, the fiat value. I'm not sure. Do you do that? Are you past that mindset now, Chris,
yeah,
with regards to, shit, it's gone from 95 down to like 83,000, and there's 10, 12 grand gone, and yeah.
yeah. No, it doesn't. That doesn't phase you after a while. Like it's kind of, yeah. It's like again, the trajectory it's on. I think you made a good point. Like people fear the volatility, but it's volatility to the upside, and people don't keep not keep, but a lot of people don't recognize the difference between volatility and risk. Like risk. risk. Is Bitcoin again? Is Bitcoin going to be here in 20 years' time? Like, yes, the risk is very low on Bitcoin. Like, the risk is very low for it to go to zero. Like, we'll name whatever big megacorp. Like, you think someone won't go out of business, but like companies don't go on forever. Um, like you look at the top companies, the S&P 500, how many companies changed in that over the last decade and decade before. So that's the kind of risk side. Like, will the company that you invest in, will the house that you have, it'll eventually deteriorate.
Mm.
There's elements at play here. Storms. There's natural disasters and stuff like that. Like that's a risk in itself. Like property can be risk of confiscation. So that's all risk.
Mm.
Volatility is just the price going up and down. Like
Yeah,
it's going to go up and down constantly, but the risk isn't there for Bitcoin. Like it's actually one of the least riskiest investments that you can have. Highest
yeah,
volatility, although that is dampening over time.
yeah. And it is true. Like if you again the S&P 500, it's being propped up. Like, it's being propped up by a few companies, and the Nasdaq as well. Like most of those companies are generally, if there wasn't for money printing, if it wasn't for inflation with money printing and going that basically being diverted straight into the stock market, those companies wouldn't be in business. I don't think it's just people are using them as a savings account. Well, that's what they see as an investment account, and all the money's flowing into those companies. Um, but then again, something happens, a technology comes along that disrupts that, and Bitcoin is that, and people are starting to put more of their time, energy, and kind of resources, their hard-earned money, cash, into a more kind of sound, stable ecosystem, which is becoming, as you say, the volatility will dampen over time. But until that happens, people will still play around with various things and just not until they understand it, they won't really get it and fully commit to it or be or have the conviction to fully commit to putting that in there, and that's fine. But yeah, there's a whole like, do you see a lot of retail coming in like over the next few months, or do you think the fiat, like the dollar price value, is going to put a lot of people off? And just
Yeah,
on the surface level, like,
good
is it going to be
question.
like price is too high? I've missed the boat, as always happens every cycle. But then, should they be ultimately again looking at the longer and the bigger picture? It's like you're sitting around 90, 95, but like, where's Bitcoin going to go? Not that you're making a price prediction, but in the grand scheme of things, do you think retail will be put off by just the initial price that it's at
Um,
from this point?
I don't think so. I don't think we'll get the same uh kind of hysteria that we had before. I think it is more widely understood. I do think there's distractions in there as well, though. Not to say that every one of these are distractions, but there's mining companies and there's stocks that are related to Bitcoin that can't have the opportunity to have higher upsides again, higher downsides, higher risk again. So I think they will be drawn on. I think it will make headlines once it breaks 100,000. Most places. I was going to ask the same question, kind of to wrap up as well. What do you say to somebody who thinks they're too late to Bitcoin or they missed the boat? Like there's a thing, and I can't remember which book I read it in, but in investing, psychological, it's anchoring. So if you've seen something that was a stock that was at $30 and then it went
Hmm.
up to $60, you're like, oh, it's too expensive. You can do it with house price as well. You can see a house price at this price, and then you think
Yeah.
that's the norm. That's where I was going to buy it at. 2 years later, 3 years later, you're looking at houses and you're like, no, I can't. Like I remember
Hmm.
that price. You kind of anchor on psychologically on what you had. So there will be people that always do that. I think there's unit bias in there as well. I don't know how long it's going to take. Like, well, two things I'll say. First of all, I would like people to start pricing things in sats over time, and I think that will happen. I don't know when. I think Bitcoin's still young in its infancy in a way. Uh,
Hmm.
to be priced everything looked at in Bitcoin, and I think it will always be that way. But it would be good to get more talk around Sats at a time. I think then again the second thing is like explaining to people the long term view. Like ultimately, if this becomes the base layer money of society, then that's a huge use case. Like, are you late to that? Like, just take if you want to take a retail view of it and maybe a corporation view of it and maybe a country view of it and say, right, take the next, just starting at the individual, take the next, stand outside Sainsbury's or Lidl or Tesco, whichever supermarket you have, and say, like the next 100 people come out of that, you're allowed to survey them. You have your clipboard there, your pen, and you say, right, do you understand Bitcoin? Do you know what it is? Like just do a general survey and see how many people actually understand it and hold it. Like you're talking single figure percentages. You
We
did
should do that.
yeah, we could actually market survey. Um, yeah, and then the second one then at the company level, like you go into certain corporations and just say, is your board discussing this at the moment? Does your board understand this? Does your board understand what MicroStrategy is doing? Do they understand Bitcoin? And again, you take the next 100 companies that you come across, maybe 10 out of the top 10 countries in the world economically, and survey them. Again, you could be down to single figures for for who's discussing at the boardroom. I still doubt that we're above single figures in that. And then at a
Okay.
country level, like between governments, like who is talking about it? Probably a lot negatively recently, but who's positively talking about this and really understand Bitcoin out of the
Mm.
next 100 countries? Um, there's not going to be many there. There's a lot of distractions again. So yeah, like are we early to it? Is it too late? There's going to be price anchoring. There's a mix of things on there, but I think overall, I think it's going to start up again. The hysteria won't be as big as before, but there will be FOMO kicking in. It's just
Mm.
human instinct, and I think once a narrative comes in, I think it was Turtle Meester was saying the stage that we haven't reached yet is like you can get FOMO, and FOMO is excitement, but when you actually reach fear, when people are actually going, shit, I don't have enough of this, or I don't have any of this, I need to get some. Like that
Yeah.
kind of anxious FOMO that you have has never kicked in Bitcoin yet, and that will come someday as well.
But
Yeah.
yeah. I was gonna say, do you think that FOMO will be more institutional driven or country driven as opposed to
I think individual
just like
eventually. Yeah,
individual?
like I
Yeah,
think it'll happen at the individual level and that'll spread. Sure, individuals work in companies, individuals work in governments. But I
suppose.
think it'll happen. Like people are selfish, first of all, like naturally, like they're going to look after themselves. When when lockdowns happened, for example, people were scrambling for toilet roll, and that was the kind of fear,
Yeah,
FOMO, the anxiety FOMO that people had. Like they, not that they were missing out on toilet roll, but they were thinking like it was an anxious feeling. And if you think that you're going to miss out on something that everyone else might grab first, that's the kind of
yeah.
it's funny comparing Bitcoin FOMO to toilet roll FOMO, but you, you
Same
get
thing.
it.
But then I just fear that people are missing. They're just missing it in that they're seeing headlines, they're seeing things in the news. Yes, they're aware of Bitcoin, but they're at a point where maybe they see the price and they're just like, oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
for the big players or the banks to be involved with, or they don't really understand it. They don't understand it effectively. They don't understand that they can actually just go and buy it themselves.
yeah.
They just
I
haven't
mean,
got past that.
yeah, I'm thinking more further down the line. Like as I say, well, you want to count them in cycles or years or whatever, but a couple of
Oh, all
cycles
right, okay,
down
yeah,
the line. Like I don't think that's happening now. Like
yeah.
the fear FOMO, but like one day it will happen where a click and people just say, "This is the weak money, fiat. I need the strong money,
Mhm.
Bitcoin." And when it hits enough people, it's going to happen and
Yeah.
drive the price massively up. And if it happens at the individual level, it's happening at the corporate level, it's happening at the country level as well. So
Mm.
yeah, I see it happening some point now where we're at in this period of time. Again, I don't see the no. In saying that, if America adopted and they set the standard first of all, like that can run into something that might cause country FOMO and then into individuals as well. So, but I still don't think that people. I think there's a lot of distractions out there, and I think people don't care at the ground level enough
And
yet.
people are like they're involved in their own things, or they're trying to keep their businesses afloat or alive, and trying to, working, trying to pay the bills, etc. And they just don't maybe spend the time, and they
Yeah,
can't have the time. They're busy lives. People are generally very busy, so just taking the time to actually, yeah, get some form of understanding around it can be tricky, I suppose. But
yeah,
again, something that we're here for. So
yep.
fingers crossed, will
Well,
be.
that was kind of the last question I was going to ask you as well. So, along the same lines. So, yeah,
Yeah.
no, interesting times ahead, Alan, and yeah, we'll keep these conversations going as usual. I think we were talking about getting a few guests on as well. So, if there's any
Mhm.
listeners out there that are Bitcoiners and have a good story, you can reach out to us and we can have you on. But yeah, let's keep these series going. What is it, episode 4? I think we're going to aim for 1,000, are we? 1,000
Yep. We'll set a date for that. How many weeks is that? Oh, I don't even try to calculate it, but yeah, that'll be an interesting time.
Yeah, yeah,
But
but
yeah, it'll be all good. No, we'll hopefully get some people on because it would be good just to get some other people's take on it, like people involved in the space and business owners, individuals, mixture of people, companies, people from other companies in the space as well would be good. And have a wee chat through things. But yeah, it should be good. But sure, yeah, sure we'll wrap it up there. We've probably gone on long enough.
yeah. But I suppose that the key message is there's going to be a lot of noise out there. Just focus on the fundamentals of Bitcoin, what it is, the trajectory. There's always going to be people, there's always going to be distractions, and there's always going to be people with ulterior motives. Just focus on what Bitcoin is, and yeah, it's
Get clear.
yeah,
Get
it
clear
is
on that.
clear. Yeah,
Good stuff. That's great. Well, sure, we'll leave it there, Chris, and we will be back next week with the next episode. Okay, take care.